The fastest mind in comedy could fill a room in seconds. A single spark, a single voice change, and the audience would erupt. Robin Williams didn't just tell jokes, he detonated them. On stage, he was electric. Words raced ahead of thought. Characters appeared and vanished in the same breath. It felt limitless, unstoppable, almost supernatural. For decades, he became the man you turned to when the world felt heavy. He was relief. He was velocity. He was joy in human form. But genius is often mistaken for invincibility, and invincibility is a myth we project onto the people who make us laugh the hardest. On August 11, 2014, there was no audience, no spotlight, no applause, just a quiet home in Northern California. The energy that once shook theaters was absent. The contrast is difficult to process. How does the brightest laughter in Hollywood end in such silence? To understand Robin Williams, you have to hold both images at once, the hurricane on stage and the stillness off it. This is not a story about scandal, and it is not about reducing a life to a final headline. It is about tracing the arc from a lonely child who learned to create imaginary worlds to an artist who could command millions, to a man navigating complexities few fully saw. Because the laughter was real, the generosity was real, the brilliance was real, but so was the struggle. Over the next chapters, we will separate myth from human reality, and we will ask the question that lingers long after applause fades. How heavy can joy become when you are the one expected to create it? The world remembers the laughter. Tonight, we examine the silence. Before the world knew his voice, before the speed, before the improvisational storms, Robin Williams was a quiet child growing up in Chicago. He spent long hours alone, creating imaginary characters and elaborate stories to fill empty rooms. His parents were loving but often busy, and solitude became a familiar companion. Humor did not begin as performance, it began as survival. Making people laugh was a way to feel seen. If he could generate joy, he could generate connection. Even at a young age, he learned that laughter could bridge distance faster than vulnerability ever could. As he grew older, that instinct sharpened into craft. At Juilliard, surrounded by serious actors and classical training, Robin's energy stood out. His mind moved quickly, sometimes too quickly for structured environments, yet beneath the speed was discipline. He studied voice, physicality, emotional timing. He understood that comedy, when done right, required precision. What most people saw as spontaneous brilliance was often supported by intense preparation, but there was a subtle duality forming. On the outside, exuberance, rapid-fire imagination, fearless performance. On the inside, sensitivity, self-doubt, and a constant need to prove that he was more than just funny. The stage gave him freedom, but it also gave him expectation. And once expectation attaches itself to identity, stepping away becomes difficult. The world was about to discover his genius. What it wouldn't see yet was how much of himself he was already pouring into it. When fame finally arrived, it didn't knock. It exploded. With Mork and Mindy, Robin Williams became a phenomenon almost overnight. His alien character felt unpredictable, elastic, unstoppable. Audiences weren't just watching jokes, they were witnessing velocity. Interviews from that era show talk show hosts struggling to keep up as Robin shifted accents, invented characters, and built entire comedic universes in seconds. The industry quickly labeled him a manic genius, a description that both celebrated and simplified him. On stage, he delivered stand-up sets that felt like controlled chaos. rapid-fire cultural references, political riffs, physical comedy that seemed to defy gravity. The laughter was thunderous, the brand was clear, boundless energy. But boundless energy comes with intensity. Behind the scenes, the pace was relentless. Tours, television appearances, film offers stacking up. The 1980s brought both opportunity and excess. Like many artists of that era, Robin navigated a culture where substance use was common and often normalized. He later spoke openly about those years, about the speed at which everything was happening, and about the choices he made. The public saw the spectacle. Few considered the toll. When your identity becomes synonymous with momentum, slowing down can feel like failure. And when audiences expect you to outdo yourself every night, moderation feels almost impossible. Yet even during this period of explosive success, glimpses of something deeper surfaced. Beneath the improvisation was intelligence. Beneath the chaos was awareness. He wasn't just performing, he was observing, processing, absorbing the world at high speed. The spotlight was brighter than ever, and the applause was louder. But once the stage lights dimmed and hotel rooms went quiet, the velocity didn't always stop. The world had crowned him the fastest mind in comedy. What it didn't ask was how long anyone can run at that speed without consequence. As the 1980s gave way to the 1990s, something shifted in Robin Williams. The velocity was still there, but it was no longer the only note he wanted to play. With Good Morning Vietnam, he fused comedy with sharp emotional undertones, proving that humor could carry weight. Then came Dead Poets Society, where he slowed down, deliberately, powerfully. As John Keating, his voice softened, his timing stretched, his presence grounded. Carpe diem became more than a line, it became cultural shorthand. Audiences saw a different dimension, not the hurricane, but the guide. Not the manic improviser, but the thoughtful mentor. The performance revealed what had always been there: restraint beneath the speed, empathy beneath the punchlines. That range expanded further with Mrs. Doubtfire, where comedy and heartbreak intertwined, and later with Good Will Hunting, a role that earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. In the now iconic bench scene, he did almost nothing, and yet everything landed. Silence became as powerful as speech. The world applauded his versatility. Critics spoke about depth, not just energy. For Robin, this period marked validation. He was no longer only the fastest mind in comedy, he was a respected dramatic actor. But transformation requires emotional access. To play mentors, fathers, wounded souls, you must draw from somewhere real. The more nuanced the performances became, the more internal they were, and internal work can be draining in ways applause cannot replenish. While the industry celebrated reinvention, few noticed the accumulation of fatigue that can follow decades of emotional output. The laughter still came easily. The craft was sharper than ever. Yet the same sensitivity that allowed him to inhabit complex characters also meant he absorbed more than most. The applause was loud. The recognition was undeniable. But success does not cancel vulnerability. It simply hides it behind standing ovations. By the time the applause became routine, Robin Williams had already lived multiple careers inside one lifetime: the manic comic, the dramatic mentor, the beloved father figure. But behind those roles was a man navigating cycles of work, of recovery, of internal battles that did not pause simply because the cameras were rolling. Over the years, he spoke candidly about addiction and sobriety, about the effort it took to rebuild balance. These were not confessions designed for spectacle. They were acknowledgments of complexity. The public admired his honesty, yet admiration does not erase struggle. When your profession is joy, admitting pain can feel like breaking character. As the 2000s progressed, the industry shifted. Tastes changed. Projects fluctuated in reception. Robin continued to work steadily, but the momentum no longer felt explosive. It felt sustaining. Behind the scenes, he faced health challenges that were not immediately visible to audiences. Reports later confirmed that he had been dealing with anxiety, depression, and medical complications that were only fully understood after his passing. It is important to approach this chapter with clarity rather than simplification. There was no single cause, no cinematic turning point. There was convergence, emotional sensitivity, neurological illness, exhaustion, and the relentless expectation that he remain the light in the room. On August 11, 2014, the world learned that the man who had helped so many process their sadness had been carrying his own. The headlines were immediate, but understanding was slower. In the months that followed, further medical information was released, revealing the presence of Lewy body disease, a condition that can affect cognition, mood, and perception. This detail reframed the narrative from tragedy to complexity. Robin's final chapter was not defined by weakness, it was defined by a battle few could see clearly at the time. The loudest laughter can mask quiet suffering, but masking does not mean pretending. It means protecting others from weight you are not sure how to share. The stage lights dimmed, but the impact of his honesty, even in vulnerability, remained. When the shock began to settle, what remained was not only sorrow, it was the undeniable weight of influence. Robin Williams did not simply leave behind performances, he left behind emotional landmarks. For millions, his characters marked specific chapters of life. A classroom scene from Dead Poet Society became a reminder to seize possibility. A chaotic yet tender moment in Mrs. Doubtfire became shorthand for imperfect but devoted love. The quiet vulnerability of Good Will Hunting revealed that strength could sit in stillness. His legacy is not measured by box office totals alone. It is measured by how often people return to those scenes when they need comfort. What makes his impact extraordinary is range. Few artists move seamlessly between explosive improvisation and restrained intimacy. Robin could dominate a stage with kinetic brilliance, and moments later deliver a line so softly it felt like a private conversation. That balance reshaped modern comedy and drama alike. Younger performers cite him as proof that humor does not diminish depth, it can amplify it. He demonstrated that empathy and absurdity are not opposites, they are companions. In the years since his passing, tributes have continued, not out of obligation, but because his work remains alive in daily culture. Memes circulate, quotes resurface. Monologues are shared in classrooms and online threads. The laughter endures, but so does the sincerity behind it. Understanding the complexity of his final chapter does not darken his legacy. It humanizes it. It reminds us that the people who carry light are still human beings navigating their own shadows. Robin Williams made the world lighter for decades. That light did not vanish with him. It persists in replayed scenes, in remembered jokes, in the courage his characters inspired. The curtain may have fallen, but the warmth remains, steady, generous, and deeply human.